Hey folks, so we are in the middle of a very challenging, exceedingly challenging global moment as we navigate a pandemic that is really unprecedented and which is really a consequence of, or let's say its reach is a consequence of our 21st century connectivity and lifestyle, and how easy it is for us to travel, and how, of course, easy it is for things to spread. So the global moment is, of course, very reflective of the times that we are in, the nature of what it means to be a human and engaging in 21st century modern life. So we want to take a big picture view of what is going on the planet, looking at it through the lens of astrology. So as those of you who follow astrology know, we are in the middle of still this Saturn Pluto conjunction, which did become exact in the beginning of the year. So in January, that's when Saturn and Pluto were in the same degree. But as long as Saturn and Pluto are within a few degrees of each other, they are still considered to be conjunct. So we're still in the middle of this very protracted Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Okay, that's what's important for us to sort of note and to be aware of as we understand the nature of this global moment. Yes? So when we have Saturn-Pluto moments, we are looking at things which, we're looking at events which are very weighty globally. We are looking at things becoming very difficult, going through periods of crisis and contraction and slowdown. So with this coronavirus, we're seeing precisely that, this things grinding to a halt, this slowdown, this sort of crisis, this sort of contraction, this lockdown, things grinding to a halt, Saturn, Pluto. We can observe previous Saturn, Pluto moments throughout history to notice that whenever these two interact, we are in these periods of crisis and contraction. But we're not going to take a look at that now. We're just making a note of that we can go back and trace quite consistently that when Saturn and Pluto are engaging each other, especially in a conjunction, that there are these periods of contraction and crisis on large scales, massive scales. So very weighty events, hardship, deprivation, things becoming very hard, but events which restructure society profoundly. So events which profoundly restructure society. Saturn, Pluto. So the question is with this coronavirus, I mean, if we are to really think about what this idea of, let's say, social distancing might mean, you know, and the idea that we're going to perhaps be forced to be in more isolation individually. What does that do? What are the implications of that? What are the consequences of this idea of isolation and more social distancing? And how does that impact where we go from here? What sorts of policies, rules, regulations, institutions are going to crop up as a result of this virus, which will change the face of our global society forever? So that's the question. We've not really faced a crisis, a health crisis of this proportion before in terms of just the global reach of this. So undoubtedly, we are now going to face up to the idea of, well, how do we as a species respond to moments like this, and what things do we have to now put in place? And some of these things which are going to be put in place are going to no doubt fundamentally alter some of the way that we have done things before. So there's a structural reorganization in very profound terms that is bound to come with facing a global pandemic of this nature. Just like when we had Saturn opposite Pluto, 9/11. And in the wake of 9/11, the face of the globe changing forever in profound ways, far too many to describe here, but 9/11 being a weighty global Saturn-Pluto moment that profoundly restructured the way that we see ourselves, the way that we go about doing things. But within all of this, Saturn Pluto tends to go along with the need to focus on essentials, a stripping down to what the bare essentials of something is. And that's what we're seeing in this global moment, a stripping down. So in the face of this very far-reaching health crisis, there is a focus, an inexorable focus on what is important, the bare essentials, the kind of skeletal structure of what is super, super important. So we're in that kind of moment. And, people are kind of tuning into this. They're saying, you know what, I'm going to stay home with the children. Family becomes important. My relationships become important. The bare essentials, what is truly, truly important to us as human beings, and the things that are fundamental. So in your own life, as you navigate this crisis, you think about, well, what is truly important to me? We're all facing that at this moment. What is really, really essential? And how can I re-engage with what is truly, truly important? My health, my vitality. So modern life is exceedingly complex. We have so much to contend with, so much to contend with. But these moments bring us back to confronting what is most important. And already people are beginning to, as they are forced to remain at home with the children, with family, they are focusing on what is truly important, the essentials. And of course, people are buying up the essentials, of course, overdoing it. Please, folks, I'm asking you to be sensible and have your wits about you as you do your shopping. Please remember that this is a global community and there are other people to think about. Do not buy more than you need in excess. Please leave some supplies for other people as you go about shopping, and think about other people in your choices as well. So yes, buying of essentials, focusing psychologically on what is most important, that is certainly very, very characteristic of the Saturn-Pluto moment that we are in. But apart from that, we are seeing, and we're going to be seeing with Saturn-Pluto, and events like this, a profound inner psychic restructuring individually and collectively. This whole coronavirus situation, COVID-19, is requiring from us a whole new sort of inner psychic restructuring, how we approach life at the deepest psychological level. So when Saturn-Pluto comes up, it's not just about, well, what are we looking at on the outside, challenging, very hard, difficult, global, external events, but we're looking at what psychological structures, what inner psychic structures are as a result too altered and changed, how we come to life, how we approach life, our psychic orientation to life is what we're looking at as we deal with this Saturn-Pluto moment, COVID-19. But, as we discussed in our podcast, the astrological cycles of 2020, we're talking about some of the psychological orientations required to face this global moment. And we said fortitude and resilience in the face of hardship. We said that we no doubt would be asked to face grim realities that would require from us a fortitude and resilience. That's what Saturn-Pluto moments are about. Very testing moments that demand from us a rising to the occasion. So fortitude and resilience, and also those of you who have your wits about you to remain steadfast and strong and steady for those of us in the collective who are not able to keep themselves together, who are so stressed out mentally that they are not able to remain steady and have a certain amount of equanimity in these times. So those of you who can remain steady and steadfast, you are playing a most important collective role, a most important collective function. Yes, and also in very much in keeping with this Saturn Pluto moment is, strict responses from authorities, lockdown in terms of where you can go, where you can't go. With Saturn Pluto moments, there is just this intensification of institutional power. So we're seeing lots of top-down rules being imposed, where we can go, what we can do, that sort of thing, very in keeping with the times as we globally have to respond to the coronavirus, and we need some sort of top-down directive to marshal us, to organize us socially as we face the consequences, the ramifications, and the effects of this global crisis. So as we navigate this moment, we should remind ourselves too that Neptune is in the sign of Pisces. We are in a highly Neptunian moment, Neptune in its home sign. And this has everything to do with our collective cognitive function. How confused we are, how clear we are. Neptune in Pisces, as we emphasize on this channel quite often, tends to have two sorts of polarities. One is the heightening of spiritual smart psychic awareness, but also on the other end of the spectrum, this sort of heightened confusion, not knowing what to believe, and being psychically disoriented, cognitive breakdown and failure. So those are the two kind of extremes of Neptune in Pisces. So as we navigate this global moment, reminding ourselves that we have to be alert and discerning in terms of what information we allow ourselves to accept, what is being put out there in terms of news and data and information. So in highly Neptunian times, it is always good to be extra discerning. Keep your smarts on, sharpen up your intelligence, question everything, make sure that you are testing everything for a basic sense of, well, is it sensible? Does this sound right? Is this true? And it's hard to do that. It's quite hard to do that when we're not scientists. We don't know the ins and outs of how viruses work, but people, nonetheless, we're going to have to be discerning and be mindful of where you are getting your information and the kind of information that you expose yourself and your friends and family to. So this is just a very sort of short, very big picture commentary on what's happening with us together as we navigate this moment collectively. I wish all of you steadfastness, and I hope that you're able to keep clarity of mind and still be practical and sensible as we all face these challenging times together. So keep your wits about you, as I always say, and until next time, folks, talk soon. Bye.